What it is, everybody. How are you? It is, what day is it today? The 1st of May. It's the 1st of the month. Get up, get up, get up. Or wake up, wake up, wake up, cash your checks and get up. What's going on, everyone? How are you? I'm tired. I've been traveling. I have to travel yet more tomorrow, but you know what? I'm happy to be here. I can tell you that. Super happy to be here. Welcome, everyone. It is episode 251 of my live chat. I am fresh off the bird from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Well, a lot of fun down there. I was at Killcliff FC last night. Did I see any famous fighters? A couple were there, but in general, I was calling fights for XFC. They have kind of two series. They have the big ones that I did, like the more what Scott Coker would call tentpole events. That was the one I did in Iowa City in last month or 2 months ago. This point ago. And then they have something called their Young Guns series. And the Young Guns is the one, it's a little more apexy where they do it inside this gym, inside Killcliff. And then it's a little bit more up and comers. Boys and girls, there is a guy. So we actually cut two different events last night. One aired live. That was XFC Young Guns 7. And then right after that, it didn't air live, but we recorded another event, XFC Young Guns 8. There's a kid in that main event. Please remember this name. I don't know exactly how far he's going to go because I think he's trying to get to the big show a little too quickly, but he is awesome. Chris Alvidrez. I'm saying it like a gringo. Alvidrez. Chris Alvidrez. He fought in Karate Combat. He fought in CFFC. He fought last night. He fought Takashi Sato and beat the ever-living fuck out of him. Sorry for the spoilers, but he is, I would be very surprised if he doesn't make it to the UFC and, in fact, do pretty well there. And then there was another kid, a Japanese kid, not the one he beat, but a young flyweight who trains at Killcliff. Who was it? Takaya Suzuki. Keep an eye on that dude. Whoa. So anyway, shouts to Killcliff FC. They were great hosts, and there's a bunch of people that said hi. Shouts to everybody. My commentary partner, Jessica Aguilar, is just one of the best in the business. It was awesome. So I just got off the plane, came right home, and here we are doing the live chat. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thumbs up if you'd be so kind on the video. Subscribe if you haven't. Here's how this will go. I put up a thread yesterday. You guys fill it up with questions. It's on the posts here on youtube.com/Luke Thomas. We'll go for an hour on that. And then if you have anything you want to get to in the paid portion, you can put in a donation in the super chat, put your question on there, and we'll take a look at it. The exception to that, of course, would be if you're a member, in which case you can ask a question or two or even three sometimes for free. Really up to you. Okay? All right. With that preamble now done, and me barely hanging on for sanity, let's get this party started, shall we? Making sure everything here looks all right. And okay. Yeah, I think so. Okay. I think we're live. I think it's ready to go. All right. Yeah. Let me see something here. Hang on. Check. Yeah, it's all right. All right. Okay. I think we're okay. I think it's okay. All right. Reminder on, you know what? Let's just get to it. Let's just get to the questions. I'm going to stop messing around with the nonsense. Let's just go ahead and get to it now if we can. All right. One last thing, if I can. If I may. If I'd be so great to do that. See, something's weird about this. Something's weird about this video. It didn't fire out to the whole group as it was supposed to. That's a little weird. Let me see something here. Give me 1 second. It's supposed to be rocking and rolling. Weird. I don't quite get it. All right. We'll make do with what we have. Let's get to the questions, shall we? We shall. All right, let's take away the back part of this. Okay. Refreshed so we can get the very best questions. Here's my very tired, stupid face. And we'll pull it up. Oh, Jesus Christ. There we go. Okay. All right, Luke, you talk about finishing potential with fighters. Would you say the ability to decisively finish your opponent is a skill that needs to be taught more? Do some of these fighters have a hard time being able to tell if their opponent is hurt? Can you elaborate on this topic? I don't know if, well, I mean, if you're a really junior level fighter, there might be some of those scenarios where they can't tell if they're hurt. That can happen. I'd say it's a few things. One, it's just a question of like experience, what to do in certain situations. How many times, for example, have you seen a guy rocked on the feet and his opponent then takes him down and then the guy recovers, right? So it's sort of situational awareness. That can be one that can be a problem. But the bigger part to me is simply just having an idea about how you want to guide the fight, like what you're trying to do. What is the end goal here? Is there an end goal? Is the goal merely to, in these instances, employ a certain set of techniques to create a distance between you and the other person where they can't really overcome it, but there's no real direction. It's just about maintaining certain protocol. I mean, I think that's kind of the point that I was making in my last video, which kind of, if you look at the comments, led to, I think, a lot of debate about what exactly I was talking about. It's moving. It's having intentionality about what the fight ending scenarios are and then having the skills to deliver on it. And so the other part of this conversation is simply a skills issue. Like Raul Rosas Jr., he actually has, to me, very good directionality, right? He has a very clear idea about what he wants that fight to do, where he wants to take it, what he wants it to look like. But some of his issues might be just some of the finishing mechanics, polish, that kind of a thing. But he's very, very good about getting to the back, for example, that kind of a thing. So it can be a variety of different things. It can be a skill development issue. It can be situational awareness. It can be, some other things as well. And by the way, as I'm going to say one more time, not every fight can be finished. Guys are getting better with their defense. There's just a lot of issues about, constantly expecting finishes. That's not the point that I wanted to make. But if the only finishes ever come when your opponent makes like a drastic mistake or it's a little bit lucky, take what the opponent gives you, of course, but that's not the same to me as I have an ability as a fighter to move the fight in the direction that I want it to go for the purposes I want it to go. It's very, very different. It's very, very different. Right. It's other than I'm just going to fight, by maintaining a certain kind of standards about what I want the fight. How do I say standards? As I mentioned, enforcing protocol rather than what I want to do is I want to take this guy down. I want to beat him up. I want to pass guard. I want to move to mount. And then from there, blah, blah, blah. Or I'm going to take this person down, work from the back, and then see what they give me, that kind of a thing. But, you're leading the fight to what we typically identify as fight-ending scenarios. Like Ilia Topuria has such good power, but also great boxing and positional awareness that he kind of knows that, like, you just give me a few cracks at these kinds of positions that I like, and sooner or later the guy's going to fall. And that tends to be correct. Habib, has a different kind of thing. And I'm listing like pound for pound, like really great fighters, but there's other ones who have clear directionality along the way. As I mentioned, Raul Rosas Jr., a little bit unpolished, but definitely fights with direction. And I just tend to feel like if you can get someone who can marry direction and skill, you just have something that's so much more dynamic as a product, vastly more dynamic. All right, let's see here. I watched an interview with Sean Sherk recently on the MMA History Pod, and he stated that Dana called him weeks before his title fight with Matt Hughes and told Sherk to keep the fight standing. What was that, like UFC 40, something like that? Rewatching the fight, Sherk did try to keep the fight standing until Sherk's corner told him to take Hughes down in the third round, which he did. And Sherk stated that he was planning on wrestling right from the start of the fight until Dana called him. Isn't that, quote, fucking illegal, end quote? And didn't Elite XC get investigated for something similar? Yeah, so, I mean, Elite XC got investigated because it was believed, I don't know if it was Gary or Jared Shaw, but one of the Shaws, it might have been Scala, Jared Shaw, allegedly told Seth Petrozelli to stand with Kimbo and not try and take him down. Now, again, that didn't really save Kimbo's chances. He ended up getting flatlined very quickly on national television by Seth Petrozelli. But Dana White has a very infamous video that came out after that being like, you're not telling him to throw the fight, but you're telling him how to fight. And that could have implications for regulatory authorities, especially for people who might be betting and blah, blah, blah. Now, I don't know if what Sean is saying is true, and I've not even seen the history pod. So a lot of times what people will tell me is, hey, I saw so-and-so say something. What's your reaction to that? And I have to be very, very careful because a lot of times I'm not in any way suggesting that the person asking this is not telling the truth. I'm saying I simply have no way of knowing without reviewing the information. However, if that is, if what this recitation argues essentially is true, then that would be essentially the same thing that the Shaws did to Seth Petrozelli. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what the difference would be at that point. Now, these are big accusations, and I'm always of the belief that big accusations require a commensurate amount of evidence, or at least the evidence has to be, if not in voluminous amount, has to be quite clear. This is one man's word. I'm not in any way saying Sherk is or isn't lying. I'm saying I simply have no way of knowing if it's one person's word against another. It's hard to say exactly what's happening here. But to the extent that what you're saying is true in terms of relaying the information as it was given, yeah, it would be, in that particular scenario, it would be no different. It would be no different whatsoever. I hope that's really not the case. Sherk is not one to be known as a liar or anything like that, but that would be bad. That would be quite bad. All right. Have you seen the trailer for The Smashing Machine? I did, yes. Why do you think they decided to do a movie based on Mark Kerr as opposed to someone else? So this is a question I was wrestling with for a long time. And I was like, of all the guys to do this with, why would they pick Mark Kerr? I don't quite understand it. Now, I was around for Mark Kerr. Not every part of it. There was a part of my life where through college, I wasn't watching MMA a whole lot. I mean, some, but not really, not much. And I picked it up a little bit later. So there are portions of what happened during that time where I was not paying attention to Mark Kerr, but he fought, well past the point I got out of college. Dude, I mean, I remember when King Mo beat the fuck out of Mark Kerr. That was a big day. That was he smashed him. He smashed him good. But I was like, this is not a name. It's an important name. And it was a guy who at the time was a big figure and was in big fights and was in big organizations. Like, all of that is true, but he was something of a figure for his time. And it's not like a guy who has transcended generations. I mean, how many current fans have seen Randy Couture fights, or even, let's say, here's a better example, Chuck Liddell? Probably not many, but they might be able to identify Chuck Liddell, right? Oh, who's Chuck Liddell? Oh, it's the Mohawk guy, and right, they would at least have some sense of it. I don't know how many, absent all of the press that's going to come out around this. Like, imagine none of this existed. How many of them would have seen the Smashing Machine documentary? Probably very few, if any. And how many could pick Mark Kerr out of a lineup? Now, he's obviously, at his prime, he was huge and well muscled, but you know what I mean? Like, beside from the fact that he looks slightly abnormal relative to an average human, you wouldn't know who he was. The average fan wouldn't know. I would ask everyone watching, have you seen the Smashing Machine documentary? How many Mark Kerr fights have you seen? Probably not many, right? Like, I mean, the dude competed in an era where fucking headbutts were legal, like in certain jurisdictions anyway. So I was like kind of wondering about it, but then the trailer came out and it kind of clarified it for me a little bit. Let me pull up his career here a little bit. Now, I will say this. Your mileage may vary. The first thing I'm going to tell you is, if you have not seen the original Smashing Machine documentary, I don't know what the fuck you're waiting for. It is awesome. You want to talk about raw, gritty, I mean, hard-nosed. It's a dude. Do you guys not feel this way? This is something you've heard me say before. It's something you've heard me say before. For example, like, I have to the left of me right here on my wall, I have a picture of Schwarzenegger winning his 7th Mr. Olympia and just, regaling, I should say, a man, in full in front of an audience at the peak of his fucking powers, right? Schwarzenegger was a guy who, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, Schwarzenegger was not just a guy. Schwarzenegger was the guy. There's Rambo and everything else and Sylvester Stallone. Okay, fair enough. But Schwarzenegger was the fucking guy. Okay. His documentary came out on Netflix and I tried to watch it and I just couldn't stomach it. I can't deal with these documentaries where the person who is the subject of the documentary has a role as an executive producer in it. To me, it just ruins everything. I cannot do it. That's not to say that there's not some value in the documentary or that he doesn't get into some interesting topics or, that you may have enjoyed it. But I just can't do it. I just cannot fucking do it. I need a documentary, even if it's a biased perspective. I want that director's biased perspective. And in Pumping Iron, the original documentary about Schwarzenegger's bodybuilding days, that's exactly what you get. It was him and Ferrigno and everybody else. By the way, that's free on YouTube if you haven't seen it. Pumping Iron. It holds up. I bring this all up to say the original Smashing Machine, it wasn't like Mark Kerr had a fucking hand in how that was edited. And if you watch it, there's no way you would come to that conclusion. I mean, Mark Kerr is shown to be a brutal force of nature, but also, just this man battered by the universe to a degree and the subject of his own poor choices and and this brutal world which he's trying to conquer. Like the whole thing is, it's fucking gritty, man. So this trailer comes out for the Smashing Machine, and I was like, why are they making a documentary? Excuse me, why are they making a movie that essentially is just a recitation of the documentary itself? It's not like they're telling the Mark Kerr story from what we can tell anyway, in like a particularly new way. They're telling it to a new generation, that's true, but they're not really telling it like in a way that we haven't exactly seen it. And again, it's not a name that anybody knows. So let's look at the time in which Mark Kerr was fighting in the UFC. Let's pull this up. Mark Kerr was fighting in the UFC in July of 1997. He fought at UFC 14, beating the balls off Dan Bobish. Chin to the eye, by the way. That's a real thing. You can look that up. And then UFC 15, where he beat somebody, two donks who don't have Wikipedia entries. And then he goes on to fight in Pride. And this is the ice-cold Igor Vovchanchin fight. And, Vovchanchin comes back and beats him in 2000 at Pride 12. And he never really recovers from there. He does get a couple wins up the line. But this is where he loses to Muhammad King Mo in August of 2009. Okay. This happened during an era of the UFC that is pre Dana White, pre Lorenzo Fertitta, pre Mark Ratner, pre TKO, obviously, but what is the demarcation line in the UFC? So obviously going from SEG to Zuffa, SEG, Semaphore Entertainment Group, the original owners. That is when Mark Kerr competed there. That is when Mark Kerr's story is relevant there. And again, a big portion of this takes place in Pride, but all of this is, if it's even 2000 Pride is before Dana White and the whole crew took over. In other words, they're able to tell a really gritty story that we know is gritty because we have seen the Smashing Machine documentary, and they're able to do and tell this guy's hard luck story and these difficulties about what he's facing that are in many ways divorced from the modern game. There really isn't anything hanging over the modern game. And I suspect that there'll be some efforts taken during the course of this movie to draw demarcation lines between the era in which Mark Kerr competed and then the current state of things and how it's all different. And there's new owners, and there's been two sets of new owners essentially since then, and blah, blah, blah. You see what I mean? So it enables you to tell a story, a really interesting story about a moment in time without necessarily some of that baggage affecting the modern brand. I think that's probably why they're doing it. Because if you were trying to tell it about Spencer Fisher, there's implications for who is still in power, right? Let's see. Yeah. If you're telling a story about, I don't know, pick somebody else who you might, George St. Pierre or anybody else who competed with Zuffa and beyond. Well, now it's a complicated kind of questioned about everything, but that's not really in play here. So yeah. One more time, if you've not seen the Smashing, where can you get that actually? Let's see. I don't even know. I don't even know where you can. I watched it years ago on. I think I rented it. I don't even know where I saw it. Bas Rutten comes across as like a. I'm not going to say enforcer, but like not a guy who suffers your bullshit. You know what I mean? Let's see. This is the original. Man, I don't even know where you can watch this fucking thing. Yeah, it came out in 2002. Don't even know. Don't even know. All right, let's get back to some of these questions. Okay. Are they holding out on the Tom/John fight as a, quote, cherry on top, end quote, for whoever signs the new broadcast deal? Surely a fight that massive would benefit nicely from a world tour and some great behind-the-scenes type of buildup, exclusive for whoever inks the deal. So we're in this kind of predicament where two things are happening at, well, many things are happening at once, but two major things are kind of happening that are making it hard to understand exactly why we can't get this fight. One is this one, right? Are they holding it out for the new deal? And the answer is that could be in play, although, you know, this was something that they were saying around Conor McGregor, like, oh, well, they're going to bleed this out because they want Conor's last two fights to be on the next deal. And of course, that still could be in play. But I mean, who the fuck knows if and when Conor's going to come back? And by the way, he might come back one time and, you know, lose real. I mean, I'm positing a scenario. He could lose quite badly, and then you don't even get the second one. It's like, how much of a boost is this really? And like, understand something. If you're going to be if you're going to be signing a deal with the Ultimate Fighting Championship for a broadcast deal, how long is that deal going to be? Probably as long as this one. I mean, a minimum 5 years, but probably potentially much longer than that. It's probably going to be for an extended period of time. So my point would be, if you're signing a deal with the UFC, you probably do want some fights in your back pocket that you can say, hey, this is going to be our launch fight. When the UFC signed with Fox Sports, what was the big launch fight? It was Cain Velasquez versus JDS. Velasquez was, I believe he had already fought. Let me double check this, but I believe he had already fought. Let's look at this real quickly. I just want to get before I start talking some bullshit, I want to make sure my timeline is right. Yeah. So yes, right, perfect. Cain Velasquez versus JDS. First main event on Fox. It wasn't technically the first fight, but I guess it was actually, because it was like a one fight thing that they showed that night. But in any case, that was the anchor. That was the anchor for their launch on Fox Sports. Cain had just come off the drubbing in October of 2010 of Brock Lesnar. He beat him in the first round. He won the championship. I mean, dude, when I tell you I had never seen something like that for a UFC heavyweight, I mean, Brock was bigger in spectacle, but like what it meant for Cain to do that at that time, you were like, dude, holy shit. Cain Velasquez is about to rule the fucking universe for the next however long. And it didn't play out that way, but that's how it felt at that time. So then the UFC was like, got it. Let's put this guy. That was the right idea. Let's put this guy versus JDS, who was the next man up. Let's put it on Fox. Now, it ended up being a bit of a disaster because Cain went into that fight terribly injured. He got, stopped quickly. It was a whole thing. But that was their anchor point. The point I'm trying to make is it does make sense as a theory that they would want some kind of anchoring fights to get the ball rolling. On the other hand, once you get the ball rolling, you have to have a vast inventory to fill that. Like, you can get a sugar high from Jones and Tom. You can get a sugar high if they were going to wait for, I'll make something up, Topuria and Islam. Again, that might end up happening this year, but you get the idea, like a fight of that magnitude. You can get some sugar highs from that, but you still have to have like other things in the pipeline. And it's not like, either there's a star problem or there isn't. And it seems to me like there's at least some evidence to suggest that there is. So are they holding it out? Well, we've seen this kind of novel theory before around McGregor, and it didn't really seem to hold much weight. although partly due to McGregor. And again, it could be the case here, but they also have to fill this calendar this year. It seems like waiting forever for that is causing real detriment, or at least it could cause real detriment to Aspinall's career, to say nothing of the fact of what I just mentioned, which is, okay, well, you get the sugar high from that, but what's next? Is kind of the first problem. The other one I keep seeing is, oh, well, John's finally waiting for more money, and now you guys are blasting him for it. And again, I'm going to say this one more time. There is a very, very thin line between I want to be paid what I am owed versus I'm going to charge a number that is so prohibitive based on how the business operates that it essentially prices me out. And how you can distinguish between the two ultimately, mostly, not entirely, but mostly can only be settled by whether or not the person fights. There could be other factors obviously in play. Someone gets injured late or whatever, but you see my point. Like, and I'm seeing this too. Like, oh, MMA media was asking for guys to know their worth, and now somebody's doing it, and blah blah blah. And it's like, I'm just going to give you guys my theory on this one, which is the one I've been saying this for, well, more recently, but it's something that's been kind of on the back of my mind. It seems to me very apparent that John has real questions internally about his ability to get this win. That's not me saying I think that he is like, oh, I'm terrified of Tom Aspinall. I don't think that's the way John operates. I really don't. But he definitely likes to operate with the wind at his back. And this is an uphill climb. And it's a question, I think, of whether or not he wants to attempt the uphill climb, given the financial reward and the potential stain on the legacy if it goes backwards or whatever, all the different factors involved. But I don't think he likes his chances. That's the read to me, because I watched John Jones just mow through motherfuckers year after year after. Dude, I cannot overstate to you, his light heavyweight reign is the exact opposite of his heavyweight reign. Like, everything you hate about his heavyweight reign, none of it was in play at light heavyweight. The only exception would be there were times, obviously, John lost the title due to all of the fuck-ups, both related to the sport and then beyond it. But in terms of like being ready to fight, in terms of like being ready to accept the next challenger, there was none of this fuckery. None of it. It didn't happen. It didn't exist. You didn't see it. It was just never a part of anything. So to see it now is such a obvious difference. Having watched both, having lived through both, it is so very clear to me that we are operating under a different set of rules this time. And yeah, John's in a different state of his career. He can make different rules. It's ultimately his choice, I guess, about how this all goes. But having watched his light heavyweight run, this is unrecognizable. This is unrecognizable. And if John were in Tom's position, or somehow the roles were reversed or whatever, and the John that I saw come up, I mean, he would this would be it already kind of is. This would be a scandal, right? This is what that would be, a fucking scandal. So it's very, very difficult for me to believe that, could it be in play that they want to hold a couple of, keep some aces in the deck, so to speak, or whatever, whatever the proper metaphor is. I haven't slept well in a few nights, but, keep a couple things for them once they launch to, really kind of hammer it home. Sure, of course. But I don't really think that that's what's holding this up. I think what's really holding this up is that John, who is entitled, in my view, to a big payday. I've been very clear about that. I think he's owed a huge one, not just for this one, but for many others. But I just don't think he likes his chances, and we're having to watch this play out because of it. All right, here we go. Oh, what a good question. Can you clarify the rules around UFC athletes betting on fights? I just watched Ariel's interview with Jeff Molina and how he was suspended by the Nevada Athletic Commission for over, I think it's almost 3 years, for betting. Yet Conor is posting about his $500K bet on Chandler in his last fight. Someone he was in active negotiations to fight for such a long time. Surely the Athletic Commission can't be so blatant about double standards just because it's Conor? This is a great question. Whoops. Sorry about that. We're good. We're good. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Let me look up something here. I wanted to, I have wondered about this. Here we go. Okay. Let me make sure everything looks good here too, by the way. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Let me show you this to you. Because I don't understand this at all. I don't get it. I don't know what I'm missing. Okay. Take a look at this. Take a look at this. Jesus fuck. Hang on. One more time. Here I am telling you to take a look at this. I'm not even showing you shit. One more time. Sorry, I accidentally clicked on the mouse and it went back to the wrong side. There we go. Okay. Now we got it. All right. Take a look at this. UFC, if you can't read this, let's blow it up a little. I'll read it to you if you can't see it. UFC Chief Business Officer Hunter Campbell wrote to fighters and teams in a memo Thursday that the promotion, quote, expressly prohibits, end quote, UFC fighters from betting on UFC fights themselves or through a proxy. UFC Insiders is the quote, a designation that includes an athlete's coaches, managers, handlers, athletic trainers, and, quote, other individuals affiliated with the athletes or the UFC, end quote, are also prohibited from wagering on UFC fights. Disciplinary action would be taken against the UFC contract athletes if the insiders were to violate the rule. Campbell added that it is the UFC's, quote, expectation, end quote, that any fighter who has knowledge of a violation of these restrictions will immediately notify the UFC. And then there's more here talking about what happened with the situation as it relates to James Krause. What? How the fuck is that a thing? And Conor is out there betting on. I don't understand it at all. I don't know. I don't understand what I'm missing. Maybe Conor's bluffing. Maybe it's like, oh, I'm pretending to bet, or maybe there's some kind of exception he was granted where if you have a betting sponsor and you're fulfilling your betting sponsorship, where you're not actually wagering your own money, they give you money to wager and you wager it, and then maybe you get like some, you get like a flat fee or whatever just to promote their stuff. You don't actually make money off the wagering. Like maybe there's some kind of carve out, because it seems to me like it's an obvious violation. By the way, interesting to note, this is why the UFC probably hasn't gotten rid of their code of conduct that's on the books. Yeah, they're not going to enforce it if you call people slurs or whatever, but they want to keep it for something like this, where if they want to enforce some kind of anti-gambling protocol, they can. But I don't understand how you can say this and then Conor's betting $500,000 on Chandler. It seems like an obvious, like a textbook example of violating the rule. I don't get it. Or maybe if you're, I don't know if he's changed his contract status, and maybe that's like, because he's technically retired by contract or some shit, But like, I cannot declare to you that I understand that there might be some kind of side deal or an accompanying deal or some kind of different provision that he's obtained a carve out. But to the point that you raise, on the face of it, it seems like an obvious problem. It's bizarre, truly bizarre. Look, I'm a bit confused why the UFC has humored John through this whole mess at heavyweight. If the goal is to make John versus Tom, wouldn't it be better for them to strip John, upgrade Tom, and have him beat up Gane and Almeida? Fans start saying he's the best in the world and John might be more likely to take the fight. Just a theory of mine, probably because they don't want to pay John a flat fee that high. So again, I don't think that they're going to pay John $30 million, but let's just say it's $20 million, right? Which I think is probably in the ballpark of what is possible, or even maybe what they have done. Do they want to pay him $20 million flat? Or do they want to pay him, let's imagine, 10 or even 15 million or 12 million, and then put in these risers in the contract where, hey, if you sell like pay-per-view points, if you sell between 0 to 200,000 buys, you get X amount. If you sell from 2 to 5, you get another amount. From 5 to 8, you get another amount. And then from 8 to a million or plus, you get another amount. And that like they can do some like estimations. Well, based on what you've done before, based on what our sales tell us and what this could be, you are likely to make an X amount between, 18 to 23 million and blah, blah, blah. Right. So that in other words, what they end up paying him, yes, it would be a pretty big upfront amount, relatively speaking, but that the way you get to the bigger figure is that the money that comes in on the fight ends up just paying for it after the fact, rather than we're just going to dump $20 million in your account and then, go ahead and do your thing. I'm going to guess that's why, because you would need the title to get paid in that particular way. And I don't know if they really want to just pay him up front. Also, like as a sales pitch to the audience, a title unification is, or rather, I don't think the average consumer cares about what the term title unification means. However, if you can tell them it's not clear who the real champion is, well, that's a little different, right? Like who's really the champion? Oh, this one's the heavyweight, this one's the interim, but like look what the interim's been doing. Champion's been fucking about. You can kind of sell that a little bit, like who's the real man there. And you could do that it's not like you couldn't do that in the scenario that you're positing. You could, but it makes it a little bit easier if no one has ever been stripped of the belt for that particular sales angle. But I think it's probably those two factors. Like all things in life, follow the money, right? Although I will say, you guys read the MMA Draw on Substack? Nate and Zach Arnold. Nate had a piece today basically being like, it's kind of funny that like if you look at how much of the pro wrestling market that TKO enjoys through WWE, it's about like 60%. And then if you look at it in MMA, it's like 80 to 90%. And yet, The Rock in WWE still seems to have an enormous degree of leverage over them. And then John, to an extent as well, or at least it appears that way, that they're kind of like, they really want to make this fight. And he's, this being this holdout and like what that might do and, how they're able to exercise this leverage, even though they've got control over these industries. It's kind of an interesting kind of argument that they make here. I'd give it a recommendation to go watch. Luke, Dean Thomas was on the Bonfire this week, which is Mike Bohn's podcast, discussing a possible Hail Mary for UFC 317, which would be Aspinall versus Gane. Fucking kill me. This kind of matchmaking you've spoken about on this channel before referencing the chef's choice argument you made on MK also. Are we going to be counting the big fights on one hand every year going forward? Is Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series vets going to flood these cards in 2026? Thanks. I don't hate the idea of Tom Aspinall fighting Gane in a vacuum. Like, is there any context where Tom Aspinall fighting Cyril Gane could be at least somewhat interesting to you or potentially more? The answer for me is yes. In a world where Tom has already fought John Jones and is looking for an opponent, and in this particular case, it's not a guy he's faced before. They could put it in the UK. They could even put it in France for what, they want to grow that market or whatever. You could put it in a place where you get a really interesting response. And I would favor Tom to win, but like I mentioned, it's a fresh challenge. Gane has held at least an interim title before. There's a little something to it. In that context, sure, I'd be happy to see that fight. But as a replacement for Tom versus John, it is absolutely a dead fucking letter to me. Like, there is no replacement for that fight, not at heavyweight, unless they could sign. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what they could do at heavyweight to bring Francis back, I guess would be the next big thing, or the next best thing that they could possibly do. You bring Francis back, okay, we're cooking with gas at that point. That's fine. But you see my point. I'm not opposed to the idea that there is at least some kind of scenario where Tom versus Cyril is an acceptable fight to make. But it sure as motherfuck is not 317. I can say that very easily. And I would imagine many of you can as well. That isn't to say that they won't make it. That isn't to say that, that's not our future. If they do, and you've got Topuria fighting for a lightweight title, whether that's against Islam or whether that's against Charles and Islam moves up after 315 or, whatever, that would certainly, for me, personally speaking, that would soften the blow because I have great interest in what Topuria might do. I would imagine you might as well. At a bare minimum, what happens to the lightweight title? That would make it a little bit easier. I would not like crazy belly ache in that case, but there is absolutely no context whatsoever where Aspinall Gane is a suitable replacement, or even, to be quite honest with you, the appropriate next fight for any UFC title at heavyweight over John versus Tom. Like, here's the other one he was positing that I saw that that portion of the interview that Mike Bohn did with Dean Thomas. What Dean was arguing, at least, was possible. He wasn't saying that this was like exactly going to happen. But what he suggested was what could be happening is John is just going to wait and wait and wait. Aspinall is going to be like, well, fuck it. I want to get back out there. They're going to feed him Gane. And what John might be doing is trying to get more tape on Tom because, every time Tom fights, he's basically exploding everyone's head within 60 seconds or so, right? Like, it's just like, it's like insane what he's doing when he marches through these guys. It's like, well, maybe Gane can extend the life of that fight and he can get a little bit more tape study and then he'll take it down the line. I mean, again, in a world where we eventually get John versus Tom, I don't want to dismiss that, but there is no other fight to make. Like I'm not telling you, if you're watching right now, I am not telling you anything you don't know. There is no other fight to make. There is no other suitable replacement. It doesn't exist. It does not fucking exist. It's not like we've got Fedor versus Brock that we could also just go to. There's nothing. There's nothing. It doesn't exist. And this notion of like John just going to sit here and wait while the interim champion, who's now the longest reigning interim UFC champion in that organization's history, is going to defend the title again? I have seen in boxing where champions will defend interim titles 3 or 4 times, but this is like, the alphabet system is radically different in terms of like creating Fugazi titles, and then guys are just kind of defending it, waiting for a mandatory to go through, or, some kind of weird scenario. I saw Julio Arce one time defend a title, an interim title 4 times. But that's a very different proposition than what you have in a situation where the promoter controls the fucking titles. Dude, Tom Aspinall fighting anyone else but John Jones next is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. There is one fight to make. Everything else is unacceptable. So, and listen, if it's John's fault and the UFC is trying their best and there's nothing they can do, then we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm just telling you, it's not very often that I feel like I'm in any position to speak for the fans, but just kind of looking around and reading the tea leaves, it is unfucking acceptable, I think, for all fans, or the vast majority of them at this point, that there's anything else that's even being contemplated at this point. Crazy. All right. So let's say Tom Aspinall loses the belt to Cyril Gane. Jesus, that would be a disaster. Does John Jones come back and fight Gane for the belt immediately after? I don't know. I think he might honestly try for something else. He might try to get a Poatan fight if Poatan gets the title back against Ankalaev. That could be something that happens too, right? Let's see if Poatan can redeem things, and he might try to let's do that one more time, kick the tires on that, like somebody else with a big name that folks want to see. Because what happened with Gane the first time? What has happened since John just ran over him that would make you think the second fight would go different? I mean, he's still pulling guard and sitting for the shittiest leg locks in Cyril Gane that you've ever seen in your life. you know, what is I mean, maybe he'll do that, you know? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what he would do at that point. That's a strange one. I don't find that scenario terribly likely, but I don't, you know, at that point, like the game's over. Like, yeah, there's other moves you can make and you will make. Like the division has to move on, but in terms of what you're trying to build, that would essentially, ruin it. All right. Hey, Lucas, someone like yourself who occasionally has to travel for work and has to keep up to date with the newest events of both MMA and world events, I was wondering how you manage to balance all of this work with home life, and if you have any advice on work-life balance. Love the Substack channel. Keep that. Keep your stick on the ice. Yeah, I have no fucking clue. I don't have any good advice for you. I don't have the slightest. As I speak to you right now, I haven't slept properly in days. I am exhausted. Um, I'm trying to keep up with the news. I'm trying to do I had to do the rundown for tomorrow's. By the way, MK is in New York tomorrow. I have to do the rundown for it, so I had to pull all the assets. I had to come up with all. It was just a whole thing. I had to do that in the flight home, and it was I'm tired. I'm very, very tired. So I don't have any good advice for you on how to balance it and be happy. My answer to you is how do I do what I do? I don't balance shit. And that leads to problems, but I just don't know what else to do. So, yeah. All right, here we go. Joint MMA Boxing Union. Does TKO going after the Ali Act mean a boxing union would be needed? A joint MMA/boxing union would be extremely powerful if successful. Could there be one needed? Sure. A trade association, even if there isn't necessarily a union, also would be quite beneficial for them. There's a couple of different ways that could work, but I don't think it's very likely. In fact, I would bet everything I own that you would, in my lifetime, I won't see one. Now, based on the way I live, my lifetime might be, I don't know, Monday. But yeah, what's your life expectancy? Midweek next week. But the MMA fighters are not going to do anything for themselves, it seems like. Again, the ones who are out, like the ones who did the class action lawsuit, it's a different story. But the ones who are currently in the business they're just not gonna, right? They're just not gonna. I mean, the evidence at this point is overwhelming that that's the case. Okay. And I will tell you, I don't know this about the boxers, but I have a feeling they're not much different. I have seen on the boxing side of things, at least there is definitely some split opinion about the Ali Act. There are some people who recognize its value, but there's a lot of people who are like, what's so great about it, blah, blah, blah. And again, there have been a clear documentation of how the business is fucked up and how the Ali Act doesn't do enough to address some of those things. That is not even debatable. It's not even debatable. That is a fact. But it's just weird that the answer is, oh, well, rather than improve the act, let's strip the parts that actually do make it good. This is my theory. A theory there's many differences between a theory and a hypothesis, but one of them is that the theory can be tested. My theory is that I think TKO is probably going to be successful. I think they're going to be successful. I think they're going to get it stripped. Now, that is hard to know because the legislative process can be unpredictable. But I mean, just understand something, right? Look at who is in favor of changing the Ali Act. It is this big, giant corporation that has a big foothold in professional wrestling. They have a big foothold in basically the entire industry almost in MMA. They're worth tens of billions of dollars. They have vast connections to the preeminent leaders of the federal government in multiple branches of them. This is a very motivated, highly coordinated team, essentially. This is the the animating figures and the money behind it is vast and organized, right? Who on Capitol Hill, if and when this legislation gets introduced, who on Capitol Hill is going to be going to senators' offices and congressmen's offices on behalf of keeping the Ali Act? Now, the answer is there'll probably be some people, but it's not like, are they going to be able to match TKO's resources? That seems very, very unlikely. I mean, I'm not an expert on legislative processes, but I've got some experience dealing with it. And I can just tell you that, like, this is not even David versus Goliath. This is Goliath versus almost nothing. I bring this all up to say, between the fact that there is no organized resistance and the fact that you got a lot of people in boxing being like, I don't even get what the fucking value is, they're ripe for the picking. They're absolutely ripe to be, I mean, very like shooting fish in a barrel. I'm not being literal. It's metaphorical, but you understand my point. Like, this is a very, I won't say easy battle to win, because, again, there could be ways in which the legislative process can get funky and depending on how they do it and whatnot. But I would suspect they're going to, and I just think that when they succeed, you're going to see boxers fall in line. And at that point, it'll simply be too late. That's my view. My view is that my again, the process is unpredictable, but if you're asking me what the likeliest scenario is I got toilet paper here because my nose is running a little bit. The likeliest scenario is that they get run over and then they just go along with it. And then you'll see that there actually isn't much difference at all between the boxers and MMA fighters. People seem to think that like boxers have like some clear sense of their authority and worth because they've been operating in a regulatory environment that has empowered them. But if you don't respect the mechanisms that enable that, and it doesn't appear clear to me that there is any respect for that whatsoever, or at least very little, then you're not going to respect it when it's taken away. There is no organized resistance relative to what TKO might be doing legislatively. I'm not going to say it's a foregone conclusion, but if you're trying to clean somebody's clock, this is a good group to do it against, right? Does Bo Nickal need to get into a war? Hang on one second. Does Bo Nickal need to get into a war? I don't usually want a war for guys, but he was super gun shy against Craig, and I think I think generally he's a victim of quick finish, early career success. I think he needs to find out if he can really take a punch and realize any true top of the division potential. Thoughts? Also, RDR, the right guy to force a war out of Bo. RDR might definitely be the right guy to force a war out of Bo because he's going to take risks, right? He's going to take risks. RDR is known for having, like, when you think about RDR, what do you think about? You think about fun submissions, right? That's typically what you might think about. A little bit more than that, but maybe that's like the nucleus of it. Do you think about like his amazing defense? Unlikely, right? In fact, let me look at his stats. He only has the 2 fights or whatever in the UFC. Let's see UFC stats. Let's see what his numbers look like through 2 fights. Yeah, they're not terrible. Takedowns 6.89 per 15 minutes. Strikes landed per minute 3.28. He does have a low strikes absorbed per minute 2.69. On the other hand, his second fight was, only 3.5 minutes, and it was against Kevin Holland, who was, kind of overmatched. And then Gerald Meerschaert, who's good, but, not necessarily a striking forward pressure dynamo in that way. GM3 is awesome, but that's not exactly his game. I would say that in general, RDR is the kind of guy who's willing to take one to give one or take one to get to a good position. And, that makes it likely that I think you're going to get some, traffic in either direction. I would just say this. There's a lot of ways that Bo Nickal could repair his relationship to the fan base. But the first thing you have to realize is he has to care about that. Like, if he doesn't care about that, it can still happen, but it's much less likely to happen. To repair your relationship to the fans, either it takes a long, long time of just naturally things changing around you, or there has to be a concerted effort. And it doesn't appear to me that he seems super concerned at this present moment with how he's viewed by, relatively significant portions of the fan base. However, there's a lot of ways he could repair that. One is going in there and just absolutely not like some kind of bulldozing, he gets the win in 45 seconds, but let's say a full round and maybe some change where it's just absolutely one-way fucking traffic and he's looking good in multiple dimensions. You might be like, okay, all right, I'm begrudgingly coming around on this guy. That could happen. Another way is he could get rocked and then show resiliency and come back, and then, score a great either submission or TKO finish. That's another good way. Another way is he could even lose, but if he shows bite down on the mouthpiece, character, I think the fans might like, okay, you know what? I haven't liked what he's been up to, but you can't say he didn't go out there and give it his all. You can't say he didn't go out there and try and entertain, or, some kind of redeeming element to what the fans might be expecting. Like, all of those are the kinds of things you would be looking for. There's a bunch of ways he could do it. But again, it all kind of starts with, what does he want to do? What is he looking for? What does he consider, important? There's people making jokes about Wiles in Florida. Let's see. Oops, Jesus, fuck. One more time. Here we go. Any idea on why it seems nobody pops for PEDs in the UFC post-USADA? Seems fishy. Meanwhile, what's her face? Tyler Santos popped over at PFL for it. Yeah. Partly, again, they don't make necessarily announcements for every single thing in the way that they used to. There might be people getting small suspensions over, various forms of contamination that you're not even really necessarily aware of. That could be something for sure. But, I think you guys know the answer to that. Do I need to say it? Like, guys, they tried the Zealots way and it had so many problems. They went back to a more, I'm going to argue, athlete-friendly system. That's not to say that every part of it is athlete-friendly, but relative to the one they had against USADA, it is significantly more athlete-friendly. That is relevant because any system that takes athlete privacy and athletes' rights into consideration into how it is built is going to be inherently more lax. Now, just because it's less lax doesn't mean you're actually getting all of the desired results that you want either. But this is the central tension. I've pointed this out a million times about anti-doping. To really achieve what you want with anti-doping, the athlete can have almost no rights. They can have almost nothing, but there's various forms where they can build in some of that. But any kind of system that takes into account their humanity, their rights, and their protections and their privacy, it's going to be significantly easier to cheat in that system. That's just the way that it is, because you're trying to not impose the same kinds of unfair penalties that come with the worst consequences of the system. You're trying to introduce not just like soft penalties, but where people are allowed to go and how much they have to tell you about it. And does Tim Kennedy have to shower in front of a guy naked because he's coming from class or whatever? Like, all of these kinds of things. Can they wake you up at 3 a.m. versus 7 or 8 a.m. or whatever the case may be? There's just any number of different protections you can build in to introduce humanity into the system. And then for bad actors, it's definitely going to make it easier to cheat. That's just a reality. This is why, hardcore zealotry, there's no good answer on drugs. You can go the hardcore zealots way where you're just absolutely trampling on athlete rights, trampling on privacy, which leads to all different kinds of problems, both for the business and the athletes over the course of time, to say nothing about whether or not it even gets you your desired result. And then the other alternative is, okay, you can introduce, better protections for the rights and privacy of the athletes, but it's going to make it easier for bad actors to get away with stuff. You'll get less problems with the innocent there. So that's one of the major benefits, but you will allow a degree of latitude for bad actors to do what they want. There are no good answers on this. The drugs are here. You cannot find some kind of way to go back to a world where we can just snap our fingers and they're gone. there aren't any good answers. They don't exist. You just kind of have to find like what matters to you. Is the best choice, and everyone's going to have a different answer, but is the best choice fully eliminating them no matter what it takes from the sport? That's one way you could go, depending on your views. The other view is we can't get rid of it all. We're not even going to try to get rid of it all. We're going to try and put a lid on the worst offenses, and we're going to try and make sure that the innocent have some protections and that the athlete's rights are respected. And then, it's like I liken it to any kind of organized society. Like, there's no city in this country, I mean, maybe in other ones, but there's no city in this country where the cops are like, we're just going to stop crime. We're just going to stop crime. Like, no one does that. It's not realistic. It would be, to try and create some kind of police state. It cannot, like, to that degree, it cannot be done. Any chief of police will tell you, like, part of living in these societies, again, they're not one-to-one comparisons between these athlete testing pools and, a broader body politic, but crime is going to happen. Like, that's just an inevitable way of doing this. Like, what can we do to meaningfully tamp it down? Let's do that. Let's take the steps that we can to meaningfully address some of the more serious abuses, and while we're protecting the rights of the innocent, and then, call it a day. That's where we're at today. That's where we're at. I want to get to this one, and then we'll get to some of the paid questions. Give me just a moment. I don't have much to say about this one. The reporting on the Francis Ngannou motorcycle incident is tragic, but the reporting was real weird. It's not exactly, there was no real clear demonstration of like exactly who's at fault, exactly what happened, exactly the circumstances. And for that reason, I'm tempted to just be like, I don't know what to say about this. I don't know what the right answer is here. I really don't. We simply just have to wait for more information. It does seem that no matter which way you come down on this, that there are absolutely no good answers. Like, it's just bad, irrespective of what inevitably ends up happening. So I'm just going to wait until we have better reporting and a clearer set of facts, because as it stands, it's unclear exactly what lessons to infer. All right, and then one last one, because it's kind of been on everyone's mind. How many men to beat a silverback gorilla? 100 get it done. I cannot believe that this is like, how are people debating this? Guys, 100 men could obviously subdue a silverback gorilla with no weapons. They could obviously do it, but it's a question of like how you do it. In other words, if 100 men charged a silverback, the silverback could just be like, they could literally just jump on top of it if they wanted to, and it wouldn't be able to move, and they could eventually immobilize it. The reality is, the first like wave of men to attack the silverback, they're going to be ripped limb from limb. The question is, if you could imagine, you could program 100 robots who have roughly the same strength, physical capabilities, and decision-making skills of humans. And you send those robots, and you even imagine they had the similar kind of build quality. I mean, I'm positing a scenario that does not exist, but just imagine that you could do that. What would happen? Like, they would charge this animal. He would rip up the first, 5, 10, maybe even 15. But eventually, by the time you get to 30, 35, or even less than that, they're going to begin to subdue him. It's going to begin to happen. Like by the time you get to 100, yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. The question is, how do you convince the first 5, 10, 15, or however many it takes at that point to just go get ripped limb from limb? That's the issue. The issue is not could they do it physically. Yes, of course they could do it. The question is, how do you properly incentivize and motivate first wave attackers to go get their fucking face ripped apart? I don't know how you do that. That's a little harder. That's a little harder. But like, physically, are they capable of it? Yeah, of course. Of course. I don't know. I mean, aside from like a fucking elephant or something, I'm not sure what wild animal couldn't be taken down by 100 men. Or a flying eagle or something like that. Maybe not that. You know what I mean? But like, do you think 100 men couldn't take down a giraffe? I think they could. It's just, if you're going to try and take down a mountain lion or anything, like, the first one up, that's a shitty position to be. Oh, we got to go get this Bengal tiger. I mean, I'll be number 100. Thanks. But you can do it. All right. With that in mind, with that in mind, we'll see what you got on the paid portion. And of course, you're under no obligation to do it, but if you would, it'd be amazing. Thank you so much. All right. What the fuck is this? Luke, I lied last week. You do have TDS, tall, dark, sex symbol. Well, I don't think that's true either. I am tall. But after that, I don't think anything is holding up there. But thank you. Samoa Joe says, Big Tom should just start publicly feuding with the UFC. Leave to become a massive free agent. How's he going to do that? Or go get paid big elsewhere. How's he going to do that? Maybe even box a boxing match with AJ or Fury. How's he going to do any of that? He's under lock and key. Can't do it. Kevin says, browsing my YouTube history, I found some old videos of you from 10 years ago. It was wild seeing you without the gray hair. But your amazing work has always stood out. Stay frosty. Yeah, thank you. I'm aging like it's a fucking contest. So what can I do? Ryan says, Luke, I was just in D.C. for 5 days. Oh, here we go. It was my first time ever. D.C. was pretty fucking great. I can't lie. Unconventional diner was money. You can't believe these dumb fuck congressmen who are like, DC's a third world hellhole. Bitch, I've been to third world hellholes. No, it's not. It's one of the best cities in the country. Get the fuck out of here. And once again, by all means, ladies and gentlemen, please, 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 do not take my word for it. You are under zero obligation to do that. Take the Pepsi challenge. Come and test the theories or test my, my proclamations. Run it through your personal truth machine. See what you get. Thane says, it's the first of the month. Just watched the Netflix doc about the OKC bomber. Do you remember where you were when it happened? I think I was in, I want to say high school. I was definitely in school when it happened. I don't know what year. No. Was it 95, the Oklahoma City bombing? When was the Oklahoma City bombing, right? Oklahoma. Oop, Jesus, fuck. Come on now. That was, April 19th, 1995. Yeah, so I would have been a freshman in high school at that point. I think that's right. Yeah. I don't remember the day exactly, but I remember the fallout from it. I didn't really understand the significance. I mean, I knew it was terrible, but I didn't like domestic terrorism like that. I don't think we've seen domestic terrorism like that since then. It was just such a weird and obviously incredibly sad, but like just bizarre. I don't know how to explain it exactly. It almost didn't feel real, as tragic as it was. But you're a 14, 15-year-old person. Like, it's hard to like understand the significance of it. Namesake, thanks for coming around. Bildo says, are you concerned at all about issues with your wife or her family returning home after the next trip to Colombia? I'm not. She's a citizen. Every one of my family, my daughter's a citizen. My wife's a citizen. My abuela's a citizen. My brother-in-law's a citizen. Everyone's a citizen. So not in that sense, but they're naturalized. And I don't imagine that I am, high on the government's priority of people to detain. But, I mean, one just never fucking knows, do you? Like, they're just in certain ways lawless. The short answer is not really, or at least at a bare minimum, not for now. But I just, I mean, we'll see how things go, man. This country is, I don't know. I don't know what to say, except I think for the time being, I'm all right. And my family's all right. But, who the fuck knows what they're going to do? Who the fuck knows what they're going to do? You've got a guy who is the head of the free world who thought that MS-13 on the guy's knuckles was actually there. I mean, this is 25th Amendment stuff. Like, who knows what they're going to do? Who the fuck knows? I don't have a fucking clue. Ant says, Eddie Hall will fight Francis, but not... Okay, Ant swears that he decked Eddie Hall back in the day, back in England, and sent him packing with, I don't know if it was a right or a left. And to this day, like every time Eddie comes up in the news, Ant's like, yo, I fucking KO'd that bum. And I'm like, Ant has never lied to me, so it's not like I'm in like a position to be like, oh, he's not telling the truth. But it does, Ant, it does sound fanciful. It's hard to know how true that is. But Ant has been a stand-up guy in my life, so maybe it is true. Maybe it is. Run Them Cheeks says, Luke, I know it probably depends on the day, but how do you typically feel after these live chats? I feel fine 99% of the time. Today, I'm going to probably, shower, but vast majority of the time, I feel fine. Totally fine. AAHS says, is there any I need my glasses. Is there anything you've picked up on, seen from Dustin's and Mac's last few fights that signal how the third fight could go different from the second? Physical, athletic, technical changes. The physical dimensions of Max having gone to 55 and the way you saw against Gaethje relative to the way he went against Poirier the first time, I'm going to tell you guys right now, I might be leaning Max. Now, the part that gives me trepidation is one, he's lost twice. Now, the first one, I'm not going to say it doesn't count, but that doesn't seem like the most relevant thing. The second one obviously does seem quite kind of relevant, but the fact that he's coming off of a vicious KO loss himself is kind of like, and that's the first one he's ever really suffered, is like, to me, the hard part that gives me some trepidation. But like in terms of him being ready for 155 this time and it being a little bit different, I actually think Max could play spoiler. But as I mentioned, the fact that Topuria just put his lights out kind of changes that a little bit, Luke, are you excited about a new football stadium in DC? I saw a PFT commenter say they should call it RFK Jr. That's a good joke, actually. I got mixed feelings about it, man. I like, dude, oh my God, dude, these fucking bums in Congress. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Guys, I've said this before. Congress blew a $1.1 billion hole in the city of DC's budget, and they did it just to fuck with us. I hope you understand that. And every time I bring this up, I get the same dumb fuck responses from people, which is, well, you got to manage your finances better. Please lick the backside of my balls. Please do that. Because that would be a better use of all of our time than you saying that dumb shit. The city is not asking for a single penny from the federal government. Nothing. We don't want any of your money. We don't need any of your money. The city runs a completely balanced budget. Every time a federal budget is passed, they make sure, if they put in some kind of language about how, let's say they want to not slash funding, but control spending at various federal agencies, they'll do that. They'll put it in the language like, all the federal agencies, blah, 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 blah. But for even since Bush, they've been saying, obviously the city of DC is an exception because it's a municipality and doesn't need to operate like, the federal fucking trade commission. It needs to operate on its own. And so they can just tax and spend their own money like any other normal city could. And that's just been the way that it's been done through Republican Congresses, through Democratic Congresses. It's been through this way through both. Well, the current Congress, the last budget that went through, they decided that they want to fuck with us. Okay. And this happens all the fucking time. They don't like the fact that we legalized weed. They make life difficult for us here. You want to have a city where the laws are decidedly pro-choice because that's the democratic process that enabled it, and they want to fuck with us here. That's just what they do because they talk all this shit about democracy. Guys, they don't give a fuck about democracy. They don't believe in anything except their own power. So what they did was, rather than keeping that language that's been in budgets for decades at this point that the city of DC can manage its own finances. They made it so that we, like all the other agencies, had to go back to 2024 spending in the middle of this fucking year. It put a $1.1 billion hole in the budget. In other words, they're just not letting us spend our own money. We're not asking for a handout from anybody. We're just asking, hey, you know the money that we normally collect that's balanced, that everyone's happy with? Can we just spend it? That's it. That is it. That is the whole story. They're just doing it to be punitive. It's going to defund my daughter's school. It's going to defund cops. It's going to defund trash collection. It's going to defund firefighters. It's going to defund emergency services, water sanitation, you name it, because they want to fuck with us. That's why. There's nothing more complicated about it. Guys, here's how stupid this idea is. President Trump is in favor of Congress fixing it because he knows, how the fuck are you going to clean up homeless encampments? How the fuck are you going to have cops on the beat to address crime or deter or whatever if you're cutting gigantic holes in the budget for no reason? The city runs a balanced budget. It has run a balanced budget forever. President Trump asked the Republican Congress to please pass it because he fucking, like, it's not, you can't make an argument that what they were doing is like good for the city or has some kind of even intellectual backing. Like, there's no constituency for it. There's no ideological alignment behind it other than this is a city of people who lean to the left. Fuck them. That's the whole thing. Even though we can manage our finances, no problem. And when we do, more often than not, things are fine. I don't have any complaints as it stands today about my trash collection. It gets picked up right on time. I don't ever have an issue. My water is fucking clean. In fact, last week the city came and through neighborhoods throughout this area that I'm in, we're tearing out if you had any lead piping in anywhere from either in your house or your house attached to the city, they were going to rip it out for free and send a contractor in to go replace it for free because we can afford those things. Yeah. I bring this all up to say, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do now? They just gave a deal to Monumental to help the Caps and the Wizards, which I was okay with. I didn't want them going to Northern Virginia. And, the stadium deal is interesting because it's on a plot of land that has just been sitting there. The federal government didn't do dick with it. It's just, you go over there and look at it. It's this dilapidated stadium or whatever's left of it anyway. And then the vast parking lots, with litter in them and shit. Like they're just used for nothing basically at this point. And so it's better if you have a private investor who wants to spend 75% of that money to actually do something with it. But at the same time, we're talking about another $1 billion that the taxpayers are going to be on the hook for, while the fucking Congress, against President Trump's own wishes, is blowing a hole in the budget. So, I've got mixed feelings about it, man. I've got very mixed feelings about it. Dude, I would love to have a stadium back. I grew up on East Capitol Street. I grew up down the fucking street. I grew up down the street from RFK. I used to live on East Capitol Street. You can look it up on a map. I lived one block over on the eastern side of it from Lincoln Park. There's this big park, Lincoln Park, and then East Capitol goes right down to RFK and then all the way down to the Capitol itself. It's a straight line all the way through. I lived on the other side of Lincoln Park when I was a kid. Like, I know this area. I mean, I don't live there anymore, but like that, I'm familiar with that area. Like, I love that area. It's a cool ass area now. I would love for them to actually like develop that part of the land that's just been sitting there. But holy fuck, dude. Like, they're messing with us. They're messing with us bad. So, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is at this point. I don't know what to say, except, these bullshit artists in Congress purposely just trying to cause misery for no fucking gain whatsoever. Nobody wins. You're just going to make DC like a little less safe, a little uglier, and our school's a little shittier. For what? For what? You're going to fuck with my daughter's school for what? My daughter doesn't go to private school. She goes to fucking public school. Bullshit, bro. Bullshit. And if any of you lived here, you wouldn't tolerate it. Wherever you lived, would you tolerate like, oh, we're gonna like the state government's gonna come in and just tell your city how to spend its money, in some kind of like extra constitutional way? Get the fuck out of here, man. Ridiculous. Just to be punitive against Trump's own wishes. Sean says, the only fights John asked for more money were Francis and Tom. I never see anyone bring this up. Well, he should ask for more money. They're tougher fights. It's clearly not a coincidence. It's these two. They are by far his biggest threats at heavyweight. Yeah, but like he should get more money for them. I mean, people say it like, oh, he does that because those are the only ones he put like a blocking mechanism on. But it's like, those are tough ass fights. Like he should get more money for them. Ray says, hey, Luke, any MMA event that can rival Eubank Ben in 2025? We did the 100-minute gorilla. Can rival Eubank Ben? I mean, there could be some. Also, the English are like sporting mad in a way that I don't think Americans are. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some that could be maybe not the same kind of cultural force, but from a box office could be bigger. It's just, I don't know if we're going to get them. Connor says, if the PFL had the UFC promotional machine, how long until they'd be a household name, if at all? They can't be. They cannot take the relevancy from UFC. The issue is not promotion. The issue is relevancy. They cannot take it. It has to be, they have to take it from UFC because the UFC has to be willing to co-promote with them. Otherwise, it cannot happen. Guys, if you could just create a league separate from UFC and sign good fighters, they all would have been successful by now. It doesn't work that way. Luke, did you see the footage of JDM sleeping Craig Jones in sparring? I did. It has to be fake, right? I think so. My read on that was that, yeah, it was. My teammate, EJ Hernandez, was on that XFC card making his pro debut. I called his fight last night. Yep. Did you happen to see it? I called it. He looked pretty good. Now, he missed weight. He did miss weight, but he fought another Hernandez, Israel Hernandez. And although it was weird because there was a mix-up between the run of show that we had and the walkouts, so we actually ended up like getting his name wrong with his opponent because they had the same last name. We fixed it by the time they obviously, the second one came out because we were like, what the fuck's happening here? But in any case, yeah, he looked good. He had phenomenal takedowns, phenomenal pressure on the back. Even when his opponent, Israel Hernandez, was pushing back, he was able to weather any kind of storm, and he just kind of demoralized his opponent in the end. So tell your teammate he looked real good. A Balder says, date night money. Salt and Straw has a strawberry Tres Leches ice cream this month, along with some other awesome flavors. They deliver through their website. Have you seen The Substance? The movie? I've not. TNA and elder abuse perfection. The Substance. That's the Demi Moore movie, right? I think that's right. I haven't seen it yet, but I heard it's real good. Willie says, if you had to guess what the future of AI is, do you tend to think it will result in the great singularity human takeover, or do you think it will ultimately just have been overhyped? I don't know what. I'm not an expert on AI, or even I'm not really moderately capable of. I have heard people give lectures on AGI, and like what that might mean. My view is that the tech industry is not capable of making much that's useful right now. And certainly AI has been useful in important ways, but in the kind of way you're talking about, I am skeptical that they can turn a plagiarism machine that cannot differentiate truth and false into something that can have the kind of power you're talking about. I mean, I have a subscription to ChatGPT. I pay for it because I like to fuck with it, and Dolly, and my wife uses Claude, and I've seen them, like they can do certain things quite well, but it's ultimately a plagiarism machine, and as long as it's that, I have doubts about what it can be. Luke, what are your favorite striking instructionals? Any Muay Thai specific favorites? No striking instructionals. Trevor Whitman's footwork blueprint has been my favorite. He's got, I think, 2 of them. I'm not sure if I've seen both, but I've definitely seen the first one, if there is 2. But that one was good. That one was real good. Jose says, you think getting rid of control from the MMA scoring would change this era of safe fighters? Keep effective striking damage, maybe modifying effective grappling to score advancing over holding. I don't know how much maintaining of control positions is codified in language such that that's why guys do it. Guys do it because they have a natural incentive to get to a control position, and then they're safe there. It's a naturally safe place. I'm not trying to like diminish it, but like it's a naturally safe place to hide in a fight. So I think it's more up to the people enforcing the rules to do that. Like referees being like, let's go. I think I accidentally listed 3 questions. Technically, is that cool or should I pick? I don't know why that's up here, but okay. Ben says, how much does fighter pay and company status / ranking correlate with safety first approach? Post Aldo fight, Mario Bautista said securing a victory and maintaining rank prioritized excitement. Yeah, well, I mean, he's at the stage of his career where like you just don't want to take a step back. You're kind of close at this point. If you can amass, there's a lot of these guys that are like at a point where like they just want to get a win because the win, a loss tells them they don't know where to go and they don't know what to do. And, like your career is short. Any kind of loss could be a complete derailment. Tends to not be that way, but I can understand why they might think that. The problem ends up being that that's a long road to get to a title. And then the second problem ends up being that they don't master skill development as much as they would if they actually got pushed back on in terms of what a loss might force them to do. Noah says, if Islam joined a no-gi BJJ tournament, how would he do against an average black belt? I don't know, man. The games are pretty... There's a significant degree of dissimilarity between MMA grappling and grappling. And my answer is he probably would not do that great. Also, do you think he would do better or worse against Gordon Ryan than Bo Nickal did? Probably a little bit better than Bo Nickal, but maybe not much. Saul says, MK all day. Thank you, my friend. Saw you were doing XFC commentary because of Kaposa, Gerbaka Hitman. Yep. When you say people should do unique things inside MMA, shout out to Kaposa, a gold mine for hardcore fans. I was telling Jessica Aguilar this last night. If you don't follow Kaposa on Twitter, I don't know what the fuck you're doing with your life. I don't know about other languages, but in the English language, he is for sure the most important person to follow on Twitter. If you're an MMA fan, obviously. Easy call. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. I agree with you. Thoughts and concerns on point fighting, extremely defensive guided fighters, but I'm curious if you think best practices and more of an awareness on CTE dangers contributes to the shift. Yes. Which again, I understand. It's not a question of like, are these, I said it in the video, it's not a question of are these guys good? It's not a question of like, again, every fight can't go to a finish. It's really not about that. It's just about of like, what is palatable to you? What is palatable to me? To me, it's more palatable when, you've got a better range of guys who can direct fight ending or can direct towards fight ending scenarios with a reasonable degree of regularity. Albert says, could you make an argument that Topuria should be pound for pound number 1? No. 2, yes, not 1. Islam had a full camp with an off-the-couch Volk and struggled with Poirier. Topuria KO, full camp Volk, and KO Max after he won the BMF belt. But it's the length of Islam's reign. It's not just the last couple of them. And for that reason, I would give it to Islam. AZ says, which one of these favorites from the boxing cards this weekend is the most likely to lose? Okay, odds-wise, it's Lopez. Because Lopez is fighting Barboza Jr., which is like of the 3 on that first card is like pretty legit. Like that's a reasonably competitive bout. The one with Ryan Garcia, did you see how Ryan Garcia's physique changed? I cannot believe that Ryan Garcia tested positive for PEDs, said the most insane shit about black people, the most insane shit about gay people, the most insane shit about Muslims, and he's getting cheered and Devin Haney isn't, dude. Like, absolutely, we are fucking broken as people. Now, of course, Garcia has tried to amend some of his ways, and I definitely think that should be cheered on. But holy fucking shit, that is like, I mean, there's no greater indictment than that. But he's supposed to walk over his opponent. Like, it's a wide odds on that one. Canelo against, I mean, Skull is terrible. If Canelo loses to him, Canelo's completely washed. And who is it? Cardenas is fighting Inoue should blow the fucking doors off of him. So, yeah. And then Haney, I think his odds aren't as wide as like Canelo's, but they're pretty wide. This gentleman writes, I'm so tired of Rock's corporate, sanitized, inauthentic PR image. As a wrestling fan, he's also causing some trouble in WWE with his board power and unreliability. BC could tell you if you ask him. BC's been telling me, actually. I didn't understand anything about WrestleMania except I saw the fallout. And so I asked BC, like, what the fuck is going on? And he kind of told me everything that was happening. I didn't realize how much The Rock fucked everything up, or at least more recently anyway. Everything about that dude is inauthentic. He's a success story in many ways, but there's nothing about him that's like, organic at this point. Carnage writes, who is the best ref? Keith Hookers and Hooch Peterson, Smoke and Herb Dean, Mark Holy Shit He's Out Goddard, or Mark Stop Smith. You could also throw in there Herzog, Jason Herzog. I know he messed things up in the Henry Cejudo fight, but in general, I think he's very, very good. Oth says, watch the new documentary, The Settlers by Louis Theroux. Yeah, I watched a big part of it already. Makes you realize that Israel and the vast majority of Israelis. Okay, well, I mean, I'm not going to. So that deals with West Bank settlers. West Bank settlers are indefensible. They're just designed to immiserate and then ultimately ethnically cleanse that area. That's all it's really about. Again, these are almost 5 million or more Palestinians under military occupation. But I think we have to be very, very careful about condemning vast swaths of people, millions of them, as all of them are evil. I think the settlers are, well, we know for a fact, operating illegally, and many of them are certainly have evil intent. But I don't think I'm not ready to I'm as pro-Palestinian as anybody else I know, but I think we should be it's very, very easy to go from I care about the rights and sovereignty of Palestinian people to, if you're not careful anyway, if you're not thinking things through, you can get lost in that, into a place where you're just straight up into anti-Semitism. And I think we have to be very careful with ourselves to not do that kind of a thing. However, there's no defense of West Bank occupation, and there's definitely no defense whatsoever of West Bank settlers. Zero, none. Asher says, with Death Rebel now making UFC walkout songs being the latest example, would you say that art is being taken out of MMA and the UFC in general? Why is that? Dude, it's hard to wrap your head around the idea that people at TKO seem to believe that they don't have enough money, but they apparently seem to believe that. So they're getting, if you guys didn't see this, they're going to be, I think they may have already started doing it. They're introducing bespoke music made by their in-house record label that WWE uses to so they don't have to pay over time licensing fees for the rights to use different pop songs like Drake or the Beatles or whatever. And it's they're just taking everything out of the fight game that we know matters. And it's not oh, well, they, if they had just taken out the fight kit, the kits, they just passed the Reebok uniform rule, but then, never touched anything else, you could at least be like, all right, well, there's some parts of this that they kept intact that kind of makes it important. But as you can see, it's just a unifying worldview that the individuality of the fighter, the individuality of their personality. And yes, they are getting bespoke songs, but it's only, the reason why they're doing it is only to pinch pennies. It's not to enhance what part of this is designed to enhance the fan experience? What part of this is designed to make the fighter as popular as possible? None of these decisions are made with that in mind. They're made with, how do we extract more wealth from this? People keep asking me what's the problem with monopoly? And I'm like, dude, there's a million fucking examples of this. It just takes time for you to see the accumulated weight of it. And we're not even close to being done. Wait till the PFL goes out of business, which is an inevitability. Wait till they go out of business. Then one is basically gone. Now what are you going to do? Well, I mean, again, we talked about Ali Abdulaziz talking about the MMA recession. He's right. It hasn't even begun. It hasn't even begun. It's going to get much worse. Old man Dave says, Luke, if Tom and John fight in a vacuum, they will die in under a minute. Great job on commentary last night. Saw a bit on Twitter. I did a little bit. Thank you, though. Lazy Bet. Hey, can you pick up my mouthpiece? I can if your name is Gloria da Costa. Fifi says, it may be the first time in forever that The Rock is well suited for a role rather than being forced into the casting. Proudest and lowest moment as a dad. I don't know about my lowest. Proudest, I think just becoming a dad. You know, you know what? I think the thing that's best about becoming a dad is it mellowed me out a lot. It mellowed me out about it. I mean, I might still be a nervous wreck or whatever, but like it mellowed me out. You know, it made me quieter on the inside. I don't know how to explain that exactly, but I've just been kind of always attached to like aggression and fucking, you know, hard-nosed shit. And having a kid changed all of that, or at least a big part of that. And I feel like it made me a better person for it. Imagine if Aspinall has to defend his interim title while John has no injuries. I mean, we riot, right? Guys, if that happens, I'm sorry, I have terrible allergies. We riot, right? We riot the fuck out of them if that happens. We riot. Like that, not defensible. Not defensible. We riot. Are boxing fans crabs in a boiling pot, distracted with these good cards to stop the Turki and TKO takeover? This new great era of boxing will come at a great cost. Yeah, you guys know Sean Zettel? He has a video that just came out right before the live chat started talking about this. He's a great voice on this. You know, these are not, you know, there's a lot of really smart, great boxing fans, but there's a lot of boxing fans that aren't thinking past stage one on any of this stuff. And like I mentioned, there's no organized resistance. And in part, you can understand it to like keep things the way they are, because the way they are, I mean, they do need to be improved. We could all agree on that. Like boxing, like if someone said, hey, could boxing be improved? You'd be like, well, I mean, where do I start? For sure. That's not the argument. But the argument is like, okay, improved in what way? What does that mean to improve it? What would we do? You know? And TKO's got a view of that. And I think they're going to be successful in getting it. But I think in the end, because they're the ones driving it, they're going to drive it in a direction that's going to be favorable to their interests rather than other various stakeholders, including but not limited to the fans. But dude, I mean, you know, if people don't think past stage one, then you're just going to enjoy stage one, and then that's it. Albert says, do you think DJ is overrated? Demetrious Johnson? No. He has many title defenses, but he fought fighters close to the same quality as the heavyweight division right now, except Cejudo. Yeah, that's not really true. It is fucking amazing to watch somebody's career, then for time to pass, and then new generations of fans who don't know what the... I'm not saying that this is about you, but to watch... I've seen this with GSP on the timeline, or even Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva's got no elite wins. You're a fucking idiot. You're a fucking idiot. Like, just because you don't understand the context of any of these individual fights doesn't mean they didn't have... And again, some of them, not you know, fighting Stephan Bonner or whatever, fine, that didn't mean much. But like the fact that you don't understand the like you know, I mean, who was it that Anderson Silva was, aside from GSP, who was it that was the big middleweight at the time that he was supposed to fight that he didn't? Like, these are just like the dumbest fucking people. And now certainly flyweight was a developing division relative to some of the other ones. But, you know, Joseph Benavidez was real fucking good, and DJ punched his motherfucking lights out. And he punched his lights out when other people weren't necessarily doing that kind of a thing. And I could just go on down the list. Like, dude, you're not going to hear me. You've never heard me slander DJ's, like, run, because you can't do it if you know what the fuck you're talking about. I lived through it. I watched it. Like, no, not going to happen. And people have been like, oh, Kamaru's got a better career than St. Pierre. If you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, you might say something like that. Kamaru had a great career. Number 2 probably in my mind, but he didn't have what St. Pierre had. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. John's resume at 205 is so vastly beyond anybody else's that it's really not a comparison. Who's the other one? Silva, GSP. Yeah, those are the big 4 typically. Fedor gets no shine too because people don't know what the fuck. Watch this. Watch this. If you're a fan now, wait 5-10 years. They're going to do this to Volk. They're going to do this to Volk. They're going to be like, wow, the one time he went to 55, he got waxed twice, and then he comes back and gets waxed by another 45er, blah, blah, blah. Like they're going to do this because they're not going to understand any of the context at that time. I saw people doing this too. Now, this is not the same thing to Anthony Smith a little bit. Now, Smith is not, people are like, oh, does Smith belong in the Hall of Fame? Not even close. Like, no, there's no debate over this. He does not belong in the UFC Hall of Fame, period. But, I saw people being like, oh, what are his best wins? Dude, when he beat Volkan Oezdemir, that was a big deal. When he beat Gustafsson, it is true that Gustafsson was coming off of the loss to John Jones, but he was ranked number 2 in the fucking division. Like, people just don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. So just wait. They're going to do this. It started to happen to Khabib. Oh, Khabib didn't fight anybody. He had a short career. That's true. But he revolutionized the game. And like people can't even see this. Like, dude, there's a before and an after with Khabib. They're going to do it to Volk. They're going to do it to Islam. They're going to do it to Topuria. Anybody, they're definitely going to do it to Poatan. Get the fuck out. Watch. Just watch. Because there are donks in my generation who were like, who the fuck was, who did Tito beat? Now, granted, once you get far enough apart, there can begin to be some real differences in terms of what it meant to win at that time versus another, these sort of generational questions. But, the one next to the other one typically is not that big. And this is just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Lewis says, what does it say about the matchmakers that Sean Shelby scored the main event for Diego Lopez? Where did you see this? I'm not saying it's wrong, but where did you see this? It says a lot on how they view fighters and fights. I need to see proof of that, because if that's true, then I don't know what to say. I've talked to Sean Shelby many times. I would dare say that I have an amicable relationship with him, such that we ever communicate, which is rare, but it happens over the years. He strikes me as a pretty bright guy. I'd be very surprised to. I don't know how to answer that question. I would need to. And I don't know Mick real well, but Mick doesn't strike me as somebody doesn't know what he's looking at. I don't get that necessarily. He may have scored it for Volk. I mean, I don't know, but I don't think the UFC matchmakers are stupid people. I don't think that's the right read. Zion says, let's assume Volk retires after fighting Movsar and or Murphy. Who do you think is going to be fighting for that vacant belt, or who will become the eventual champion? John Silva? Could be, yeah. Yeah. John seems like a decent character. Yair might actually climb back up there. I wouldn't say Pitbull. I wouldn't say Ortega. Yeah, that's about right. Two Changs. One of the most popular matches in Roman Coliseum was woman versus dwarf match. In recorded history, it was pretty even, 50-50. Who would you take? Woman. Well, I guess it depends on the dwarf, doesn't it? And I guess it depends on the woman, but probably woman. Tom says, given the state of the PFL, what is a realistic time frame for us to see Paul Hughes in the UFC? See, that's a little harder to say. It could be years. I don't know. Because if they're good at raising money, then they can just keep raising for at least a little while longer. That one's harder to say. I don't know how to answer that. 9:15. Saw a pic of you with MS-13 knuckle tats. Watch out. Can you fucking believe this guy? Like, dude, we're so fucked. We're so unbelievably fucked. And don't even give me this. No, he was talking about how they were interpreted. First of all, the interpretation, MS-13 experts, and I'm going to say it like a gringo, Tren de Aragua experts all talked about, like, to the extent that, first of all, the Venezuelan gang doesn't necessarily use tattoos in that way. MS-13 definitely absolutely uses tattoos, but not the way in which it was described in that. Like MS-13 experts were like, no, this does not mean at all MS-13 whatsoever. More to the point, like photoshopping MS-13 on it and then being like, oh, it's fucking MS-13. Like, dude, we're so fucked. We're so fucked. We are absolutely so fucked. But of course, I've got TDS, so don't worry, everything's going to be fine, right? Dave says, do you listen to the It Is What It Is podcast with Cameron and Mace? On occasion. They discuss boxing sometimes, and I love an MK collab. Cameron is one of my all-time favorites. Cameron's Purple Haze is easily one of my top 3 albums of my life. Absolutely one of the most incredible pieces of work I've ever heard. He's a little homophobic for me, which I don't really love, but I do like Cameron generally, and I think they have an amazing podcast, and but I don't listen like super hardcore every episode or anything like that. Look, have you heard of the correlation of people being anti-Palestinian Zionist tending to age like shit, i.e. celebrities like Michael Rappaport, Deborah Messing, Sharon Osbourne? Sharon Osbourne is? I didn't even realize. I knew about Michael Rappaport and Deborah Messing. Also like Gal Gadot, like, ugh. You mean aging? Like, you mean like literally as they get old, they look worse? I mean, this is what I mean, guys. You got to be. I'm not signing on to that shit. You know what I mean? I'm not. I mean, like I realize that Michael Rappaport's career is in a different place, but like, I'm not signing on to like, oh, there's physical traits about them that is a function of their worldview, and that's why they look the way they look. You're getting into territory that makes me a little uncomfortable. Make the argument about what the argument is. These acts by the army, these acts by the leaders, and to an extent there is some popular support. I see to a large extent there's popular support in it in Israeli society. Make it about the views, make it about their actions, make it about that. Don't make it about something else. It will lead you down a dark path that will obscure what the actual truth is. Make it about the actions that they take and nothing else, or the things that empower those acts too. Isidro, what's up, buddy? Drock says, I'm a washed 36-year-old dad. Always wanted to have a kickboxing match, but have no experience. Just started at a gym. What should I work the most? Your decision-making skills to make you think you want a kickboxing match. You're 36. Hang it up, brother. Hang it up. Have a smoker in the gym. That's cool. Have a smoker in the gym. Do not go fight on a fucking card. Oh, you can fight amateur. I mean, all right, if you're going to fight amateur, it's not the end of the world, but, don't fuck your brain up, which you could do. Like, don't do that. You can a smoker in the gym, 2 3-minute rounds, or I should say 3 2-minute rounds, something like that you could do. Something like that you could do. Don't do that shit. Protect your brain. Kid says, oh, he's a member. What's up, bro? It's a weird ass picture. GJ Brass, I like the BMF belt because it pays fighters. Why is it not linear though? How can the BMF be a guy that just got knocked out? It's sort of like how Pride used to do titles. Takanori Gomi was the Pride champion, but then he had a non-title fight during the middle of his Pride run, and he lost to Aurelius. And then they had a rematch under the title, and he won. So it was like a thing. But, listen, to the point that you raised, it's a gimmick belt, and it gets the guy who has it paid. Just let it be what it is. Cloud says, what do you make of Zombie Biden not even an attempt on a ceasefire, and Oren Schittler falling for the most obvious Photoshop that were fucking ruled by absolute cretins? Did you see the reporting there was an Israeli media outlet this week that reported that, it was reported basically from what they had heard from an ambassador who had said on the Israeli side that the Americans had never pressured for a ceasefire under Biden one time. They never bothered to ask for it. Understand, like, we prop that, like, that country could not basically exist but for what we offer them, both in terms of military support for their nuclear program, you name it. They would fall to pieces without us. Like, we have extraordinary leverage over them should we be willing to exercise it, and they just didn't. They just never said, please stop killing them. Please seek a peace deal. They just didn't do it. And, Joe Biden deserves to be tried in The Hague. I can say that without I'm looking right at the camera. He is a war criminal. he deserves to be tried in The Hague. It's very easy for me to say that. And then you've got a guy who can't tell the difference between Photoshop and not making trade policy, and you've got empty ports. Okay, we're fucked. We're super fucked. We're so fucked. We're so fucked. We're unbelievably fucked. Henry says, my favorite Schwarzenegger movies are Terminator 1, great movie, Running Man, underrated Schwarzenegger flick, and Total Recall. All of them excellent. Were you also a fan of Sylvester Stallone? Yes. Favorite Rocky movie? Probably the Ivan Drago one. Which one is that? I can't remember anymore. My brain doesn't function. Whichever one that was the one that I like. Anon says, coming to the U.S. in a couple of months from Mexico in a tourist visa to check out DC and Doc's Film Festival. Kind of nervous to go through customs. Advice? Make sure you have all of your proper documentation, and you should probably be okay, right? Like you've got your return ticket, you've got where you're staying, you've got any kind of, make sure your visa is the correct one. Bring any kind of documentation to support any of these things. Just don't come in there empty-handed, So we'll see. Sydney says, always appreciate the content. Thank you so much for your work. Well, thank you, Sydney. I appreciate you. Best reads for Intro to Philosophy. Ooh. Discipline and Punish, Foucault. Anarchy, State, and Utopia. Anarchy, State, and Utopia, Nozick. These are tough things to read. The Gay Science, Nietzsche. There's so many different things. Intro to philosophy. Philosophy is not one thing. It's many different kinds. There's many different kinds. There's so many different subgenres, but these are things that I read early on that had a big one. Those are three that could take you pretty far. You could do Thus Spoke Zarathustra as well for Nietzsche. You could read that one as well. You could read Schopenhauer or Schopenhauer. You could read again, I was a big David Hume fan. I'm not sure what particular work I would recommend more than the others. I'm thinking that through. Yeah, just go with the ones I mentioned. We did this one already. Favorite BJJ instructional? Just Stand Up from Craig Jones. Game changer. Game changer. Rajon, did Connor have cardio issues at 55 and 70? Yes. Yep. Ben, thank you. Terrence, have you seen Sinners? If not, it's great. Not yet. I've been so busy, guys. I have not had a chance at all to do anything. Wildmont says, what do you make of Eddie saying most people can't name 5 UFC fighters? I saw that. It was 6, and it was Eddie Hearn. He's right. They couldn't. Why is that? That doesn't mean you can't or that I couldn't. He's saying the average donk. Yeah, the average donk couldn't. Yeah, that's right. Dave says, how are you feeling about the Caps, Luke? They just won, right? They ran through the Habs. Well, they dropped 1 to the Habs. But otherwise, they looked fucking awesome. It's kind of funny. The year they won the Stanley Cup, 2018, they started every series in that down. They started from a deficit basically in every series. And they had to kind of basically rally in every series. This one, they kind of cruised. So I don't know. Knock on wood, yeah? Two Changs, do you think Bill Belichick met his girlfriend on an airplane? Over under Bill last 2 years at NYC or UNC? I'll say I'll take the over. I'll take the over. I think that he's for now still pretty toxic in the NFL. Kid says the promo for Ryan Roley makes it look like I saw it. Ryan and Haney are fighting. You're totally right. When it literally depicts their real opponents as food. Are Roley and Ramirez being disrespected by Turki and co here? Yeah, dude. Garcia didn't look that awesome at Fight Week. The dude went up a weight class and turned into skinny fat. How did that happen? Eddie Hall is not racist. I hope not. He absolutely might not be. All I can tell you is in 2013, he was like, yo, I totally am. But maybe he's changed since then. It's just that no one ever seems to ask him, but so you could be totally right. I'm not saying that he is today, but he definitely said that he was. That's a fact. Cam says, another trouble for Barca loading. Maybe. They do look fucking good, bro. You were right about Real at the start of the season. They aren't winning shit. Yeah. And then they had this whole thing where Carlo Ancelotti is going to go to Brazil to be the coach, and then that fell apart, and then they're going to get Shelby, and I don't know where the fuck that stands. And then it was going to be Santiago Solari who was taking over, and then Ancelotti was going to go, and then that whole thing fell apart. I don't even know where the fuck all that stands now. It's a bad season, and now the entire starting defensive line is out. Holy shit. Johnny says, Luke, I left the Navy after 12 years of service. A lot of good and a lot of bad. My oldest kid was 3 months when I got out. How do I tell my kids I was enlisted, if at all? How do you navigate this? Tell them the truth about your life. Why is that hard? Tell them the truth. Show them pictures. Tell them the decisions you made. Tell them why it was good. Tell them the truth. Like, well, you have nothing to hide. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Assuming you got honorably or reasonably, general other than honorable conditions. Like, you have nothing to hide. Tell them the truth. Is Trump losing support from the right? There's no question. There's no question. And it's only just beginning. Again, I know a lot of y'all don't want to hear this from me because you don't agree with my worldview, or you think I'm like so lost in the sauce I can't possibly read the tea leaves, and that's fine. I realize that for those folks, there's not much I can say to convince you, nor am I trying. But just wait. Like, it's off to a historically bad start. The polling is clear. There are certain things where he polls well, as I mentioned, on the border. And then relative, like I saw a recent poll, they were like, oh, if Harris tried to run again, how would you do against Trump? And she still polls poorly relative to him, but in general, people are really pissed. And dude, we're going to have empty fucking shelves here pretty soon. It's going to get worse. It's going to get fucking worse. And it might get way worse. He's going to be in the 20s. Here's my prediction. You will eventually see his overall approval rating in the 20s. He's already at 39. T-Ball Paul says, I believe Mike Bohn left out Jorge Patino in the B2B loss, then title shot stat. He lost twice to Jose Landy Johns before Pat Miletich making the combined records 1-6, not 1-5. This is before Volk. Was that in the UFC? Was that in the UFC? Let's see. Hey. God damn it. Oh, my keyboard died. All right. I'll have to look it up. You might be right. What did you think about the Canadian election? I mean, what is there to say? They took one look at the disaster of our country and were like, yeah, no fucking thanks. Dude, even that dude who was the head, I can't pronounce his name, Poilievre, however you say his name, the Canadian leader on the right who was like a sort of a semi-Trump version of him. Not only does his fucking party lose, he lost his fucking seat. They took one look at us and they were like, yeah, no thanks. Who can blame them? Dude, the guy, we're out here talking like, oh, we're going to annex fucking Canada. Just going to completely run over their territorial sovereignty. You know how fucking insane that is? We're just going to take shit from people? Who the fuck are we? You can't just take things like that, especially when you have no cause. It's not like we're at war with them or something. We're trying to this is post-imperial Japan and we're getting McCarthy to rewrite their constitution. What are we talking about here? Or MacArthur, not McCarthy, excuse me. MacArthur to rewrite their constitution. It's fucking bananas. It's fucking bananas. They have every right to feel the way they do. Wouldn't you? If they were talking like that about us, you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Thoughts on Elon leaving the White House? Couldn't happen soon enough. The guy tanked his reputation, tanked his business. Tesla is now looking for a new CEO, despite the denials. They absolutely are. He destroyed. He set tens of thousands of people into unemployment. He's going to fuck up the local economy here, which I know nobody cares about. But another reason why I'm ambivalent on the stadium deal. And they don't have any savings to show for it. Where was the fraud? Where was the FBI to show us the fraud? Where was it? Where was it? Doge exists as a data theft operation and to help synthesize a surveillance state within the country by creating a single database or fewer databases that collate across different agencies. They were supposed to be separate. They have now taken that data and then put it together to create a bit of a surveillance state. That's what Doge did. This whole, we're going to get efficiencies and just a complete smokescreen. Has nothing to do with anything. And then, of course, he dismantles the agencies that were looking into his various issues and investigating his businesses. It's a scam. It's a fucking scam. But, I tell people that and then they tell you, fucking TDS. It's like, okay. All right. I mean, there's just people that just do not want to be convinced by the reality that's in front of them. How come Connor had cardio at 45 but bad at when he didn't have great cardio at 45? He just didn't see it as put on display. Daniel says, my cats versus your caps about to hit like crack on a Monday morning. Gatos and 5. You might be right. I don't know. I love the Caps. Obviously, I want to see them go far, but I don't watch any other. I mean, I watch the Caps when they play other teams, but I don't know enough about a bunch. I don't know. You might be right. They could be better. Who the fuck's to say? All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hey, 7 p.m. tonight. Glory is going to air an underground event. I'm going to try and stop by. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but either way, it's going to air right here on this channel. So you can just come and watch Glory and enjoy yourself and have a great time right here on this channel. So stick around for that. It should be a ton of fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to have probably a live stream tomorrow for the boxing. We're definitely going to have one for UFC Iowa, and there might be some other goodies thrown in along the way. So lots of live streams coming to you this weekend. Okay? I'm out of here for now. Thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you later. Until next time, stay frosty, boys and girls. Bye.